Night of the Twisters, and this chapter is called 8 o'clock. Arthur and I flipped on the TV as soon as we got back to my house. He chucked the sack containing his clean socks and Fruit of the Loom underwear onto the sofa and then stretched himself out there. Channel 5 or 1011, I asked. 1011. I moved his feet and sat down next to him. I could hear Mom out in the kitchen sewing away on Grandma Hatch's birthday dress. Clickety-clack, fast, then slow, then a long humming stretch where Mom gunned it for all she was worth. Arthur made one of his terrific accelerating noises and we both doubled up. Have you ever seen a sewing machine before? So a sewing machine, you push on the pedal and it sews for people, and that's how Mom is making a dress for Grandma Hatch, for Dad's mom. The TV show had already started, but that rarely bothers Arthur and me. When we're watching something funny like Laverne and Shirley or Happy Days, we can tune in any old time. When the first commercial came on, I went to the kitchen for some potato chips. I couldn't believe what I saw there. The curtains at the kitchen window were blowing straight in. They looked like something a cartoonist might draw. "Hey!" I shouted for Mom to look. "Isn't that crazy?" So imagine you're looking at your window and the curtains are just blowing straight in. I leaned over the sink to peer out, but Super Breeze nearly flattened me. "Would you close that, please?" Mom said. It's suffocate or blow away, one or the other. You put your bike in the garage, I hope?" "Yep." I opened the cupboard where we kept the chips. "You suppose Dad and Grandpa got the tractor running yet?" I asked. "Probably." She lifted the presser foot. That's what makes the sewing machine go and then stop, go and stop. And I heard her snipping threads. If Arthur hadn't been there, I'd have sat down and watched her sew. I loved her new machine. It was the last thing she bought before she quit at the hair boutique. She really knew how to operate it, too. Forward, reverse, flip, snip, zigzag, zigzag, zig, 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 zig. I made zigzagging motions in the air until Mom asked what in the world I was doing. Then I remembered why I had come into the kitchen in the first place. "We're out of chips, Dan, if that's what you want." I settled for soda crackers. I watched Mom as she held the top half of the lavender dress at arm's length to inspect it. So what color is lavender, do you know? A purple, a light purple. That's what color the dress is. "I wonder if Mother Hatch wants the skirt gathered or pleated," she said more to herself. "Why not do both?" Mom grinned. She blew a strand of hair out of her face and then pushed back her chair and went to the phone. "I'll be sorry if I don't ask her." "That's funny," I heard her say a minute later. I looked up from spreading peanut butter on crackers to see her staring at the mouthpiece. She clicked the little chrome piece up and down and then dialed again. "Well, now it's ringing, but no one's answering," she mumbled. "Where would Grandma Hatch be on a night like this?" I shrugged and carried my plate of crackers back to the living room. Arthur was so glad for the arrival of food that we almost missed the severe weather announcement coming over the TV. "In the St. Paul area, just north of Grand Island." I heard that much. Mom rushed in through the dining area. "Listen," she shushed us. "In effect until further notice is given, warnings are being issued for St. Paul, Dannenbrog, and surrounding rural areas. Funnel clouds have been sighted near Dannenbrog. Persons in those vicinities are urged to take all possible precautions." Mom had her hand over her heart. "St. Paul's, northwest, thank God." Arthur sat up, his eyes round. "Grandpa's farm is east, close to Phillips," I explained. "St. Paul's still too close for comfort," Mom added. "Do we have to go to the basement?" I asked. Now that we were all set for the next show, I hope not. Because really, if you have a basement, that's where you should go, right, if the storm warnings come up. Mom didn't answer. She had her face right up against our big front window, shielding her eyes, trying to see out. Normally she's a lot more casual about storms than Dad is, but she looked worried. "It's pitch black out there," she said. "I've never seen it so dark this early." It was noisy outside as well as dark. Our shake shingles flapping and smacking overhead made me think somebody was up there playing a xylophone on the roof. Minerva didn't like the weather either. Minerva, do you remember who that is? Their cat? She was crouched under Dad's chair with her ears back. No wonder. She'd be carried off like a tumbleweed in one of our stiff prairie winds. I was glad when Mom pulled the drapes for us. "Do we have to go downstairs?" I asked again. "Not yet, Danny. We'll keep listening to the TV." Arthur spoke up. "Tornadoes move from southwest to northeast, remember?" I remembered. Our science class had taken a field trip in April to visit the weather service out in the airport. The meteorologist had shown us how they get the hook echo on radar, how they post a watch, all that technical stuff. Arthur made arm motions toward a plant hanging in the corner of the room. "It'll head off that way someplace." His expert opinion should have made me feel better, but it didn't. He helped himself to another cracker and then settled back into the sofa cushions. He wasn't worried. Mom's forehead puckered as she walked away. I knew it was on her mind. We were both wishing Dad was home. We watched TV another few minutes, but I couldn't get into it like before. Not that I was scared exactly. I'd been through dozens of tornado watches in my life and nothing ever happened, although a barn roof got rearranged over in Clay Center one year. Every spring, practically, we have to hit for the cellar, as Grandpa puts it. But when a tornado watch changes to a warning and then the siren starts, well, that's when things aren't so mellow anymore. Shouldn't you call your mother, Arthur? Mom said to him after trying the phone again. I'm not sure she'd want you to stay here tonight. Oh, Mom, I groaned. There I was thinking the sun rose and set on me. Wait, I better call Goldie first, she said. Someone should run over and check on Mrs. Smiley when she turns that hearing aid down. Remember, that's the older neighbor lady. After a while, she hung up again. Doesn't anybody stay home? She muttered. By then, I was standing in the kitchen doorway trying to tell her Aunt Goldie had probably gone bowling. Who are you calling now? I asked instead. Her attacks on the phone were suddenly more interesting than what was happening in living color in the 19-inch screen. Mrs. Smiley, shh. She's trying to finish a needlepoint cushion for the Presbyterians, Arthur piped up from the sofa. Yeah, I whispered in Mom's face, remembering, and I'm supposed to tell you not to forget she's coming Friday for you to fix her hair. All the while, Mom was waving her hand for us to be quiet, so I backed away. The next thing I knew, she was at the hall closet putting her red windbreaker on over her jeans and her Hastings college t-shirt. She doesn't answer, she said. I'm driving over there to make sure she has her TV on. I won't be long. Now listen, both of you. We listened. She was using a very firm voice. I want you to take this flashlight. She got it off the shelf and handed it to me. And a blanket. And put them in the downstairs bathroom. I want you to do it this minute. I nodded, trying the flashlight to make sure it worked. If the siren starts, get Ryan and go downstairs. Don't wake him if you can help it, all right? Arthur's eyes got big listening to Mom. He told me once they never go into the basement during a windstorm. That figures. They moved here from California. What do they know? Ever hear of a tornado in good old California? Mom went to get a blanket. I'll be right back, she told us, hooking her purse on her shoulder. I'm sure nothing's going to happen, but we have to be prepared, right? Your father would have a fit if we ignored the siren. She smiled and waved her car keys at us as she left, barely squeezing out before the door slammed shut again. Woo-wee, Arthur exclaimed. Sounds like my bull roarer outside. I hurried downstairs with the emergency stuff and set it on the bathroom counter. So they have a fairly decent basement, right? Because you go downstairs and they have a bathroom down there, and so he's putting this emergency stuff on the bathroom counter. Minerva went with me, scurrying across my feet on the steps, acting the way she does when she wants attention. I picked her up by the middle, smoothed her down her stripes, and balanced her on the glass door of the shower. Usually she'll do a tightrope act for me, but she only yowled and jumped off. After giving me her mean jungle look, she sat down to dig in her ear. You got a flea in there? I asked, bending to give her a good scratching. She didn't like that either. Upstairs, Arthur was hooting and hollering again. I decided I was missing all the good parts, so I hurried up the 2 short flights of steps with Minerva dashing ahead of me. Sometime in there, in the middle of all that comedy on the screen, the siren began. Now that is a very sobering sound. It's unlike anything else, having its own built-in chill factor. I thought of Mom first. She'd hear it and come back, I told myself. Then I thought of Dad and how far the farm was from town. They wouldn't even hear the siren out there. In half a second, I was at the phone dialing 555-2379. 4 rings, and then I heard Grandma's voice. Grandma, I shouted into the phone. Where have you been? There's a tornado just north of GI, Grand Island. The siren's going. Can you hear it? A voice said something, but it sounded so far away. Talk louder, Grandma. I can't hear you. The voice faded away entirely. I wasn't even sure it was Grandma's now. There's a tornado coming. Can you hear me? Finally, there wasn't anything on the line but the sound of another phone ringing very faintly, as if it were in New York or someplace far away. I couldn't figure it out. By then, Arthur was standing next to me, and I was just about to hand him the phone when abruptly the siren stopped. It didn't taper off. Usually it'll go, it just quit, as if someone had snipped it with the scissors. Except for the TV, everything around us suddenly seemed very still. They call that the calm before the storm. Sometimes it gets very quiet, but that's not good. Hey, he said, raising his eyebrows. They changed their mind. I hung up the phone. I didn't know what was happening. Maybe they got their weather signals crossed, he suggested happily. They could, you know. I read a book once about that happening, where this whole fleet of fishing boats put out to sea. He rattled on. I ran to the door thinking I might see Mom pulling into the driveway, but no luck. It's quit blowing, I called over my shoulder to Arthur. And sure enough, the wind had died down. Maybe the storm wouldn't amount to anything after all. That nice, comforting thought had hardly entered my mind when the siren blared forth again. With a jolt, I remembered what Mom had told us to do. We always turn on the radio, Arthur said, already on his way to the kitchen. You want me to? I'll get the weather station. I was hardly listening. I hurried down the bedroom hallway to Ryan's room at the end. I hated, like everything, to get him up. Do you ever like to wake up a crying baby? No. A sleeping baby? No, because we don't want him to cry, right? But his mom had told him, if the alarm comes back on, you need to get him. He'd cry. I knew he'd wake up and cry. Without Mom, Arthur and I would have him screaming in our ears the whole time. When I saw him in his crib, peacefully sleeping on the side of his face, his rear end up in the air, I just didn't have the heart to wake him up. I'd wait a minute or two. Mom would be back. Anyway, it's blowing over, I told myself. It won't last. Quietly, I closed the door behind me. That's when the lights started flickering. In the hallway, I practically had a head-on collision with Arthur, who was coming at me really fast. The look on his face scared me. There's no, what? There's no radio reception anymore. It just went dead. This guy, he kept saying, tornado alert, and then it went dead. We rushed back to the living room, and the TV was flashing these big letters that filled the entire screen. CD, CD, CD. What does it mean? Arthur cried. Civil defense emergency, I rolled around. I'm getting Ryan. The lights flickered again. At the same time, we heard these really strange sounds that stopped us in our tracks. They were coming from the bathroom and the kitchen. Sucking sounds. The drains were sucking. I felt this awful pulling in my ears, too, as if there were vacuums on both sides of my head. I've got to go home, Arthur cried all of a sudden, bolting for the door. I ran after him. You're not. You can't. I grabbed the back of his T-shirt, hauled him around, and pushed him toward the stairs. Get down there. I have to get Ryan now. Go. I don't know what I'd have done if he hadn't minded me. We were catching the fear from each other. And even though the siren was screaming at us on and off at us again, so I didn't know what it was telling us, I knew we had to cover fast. The lights went out for good just before I reached Ryan's room. And this next chapter is called 9 o'clock, so the next hour. I smashed face first into Ryan's butterfly mobile. Do you guys know what a mobile is? It sits over a crib, and sometimes it has like animals on it, and it turns and makes music. That's how I knew I was at the crib. I felt for him, because remember, it's dark in his room, so he's feeling around for him, plus there's no light. Got my hands under his nightshirt and diaper, rolled him over. I lifted him, but we didn't get far. He was caught in the mobile. His arms or his head, I couldn't see. I couldn't get him loose. Mom! I yelled, though I knew she wasn't there. I tried to lay him down again, but he was so tangled, part of him was still up in the air, and he started to cry. Wait, Ryan, I'll get you out. But I couldn't. Finally, holding him with my left arm, I climbed onto the side of the crib. My right hand followed the string up the mobile way up to the hook. I yanked it loose. The whole thing came crashing down on top of us as I jumped backward off the crib. The plastic butterfly poking me was poking Ryan too, but I didn't care. The tornado was close, and I knew it. Both my ears had popped, and I had this crazy fear that those drains, sucking like monsters now, would get us if the storm didn't. So the air pressure changes during a tornado. So he'll feel like popping sounds in his ears. He can hear the drains sucking the water out. It's a terrible thing. Arthur was at the bottom of the stairs waiting. Thank God he found the flashlight. I jumped the last half flight to the floor. Hurry, I screamed. I swung onto the doorway of the bathroom with Arthur right behind me. We crouched under the towel rack. Shine it here on Ryan, I gasped. He's caught in this thing. By now, Ryan was kicking and screaming, and his eyes were big and alight. Once we got the mess of strings free of Ryan's sweaty nightshirt, Arthur kicked the mobile against the wall by the toilet. So remember, they're in this little bathroom in the basement. So luckily, they're inside this basement bathroom. So hopefully that's okay. You know, they tell you to, if you don't have a basement, to get into the bathtub. Sometimes they tell you to put like a bicycle helmet on your head if you have one, or something heavy, so that if things fly, your head won't be hurt. I have to go home, he cried. They won't be in the basement. Mama never does. The beam of light bounced around the blackness of the bathroom as Arthur scrambled to his feet, but I grabbed and held on to him. You can't go. It's here. Can't you feel it? The siren quit again as I pulled him back down and threw my leg over him. The flashlight clattered to the floor and rolled away from us. We heard it next. The lull. The deadliest quiet ever. One that makes you think you might explode. The heat in that room built until I couldn't get my breath. And then I began to hear noises. A chair scraping across the kitchen floor upstairs. Your mom's back, Arthur said, pushing at my leg. I knew it wasn't my mother moving the chair. The noises got worse. It seemed as if every piece of furniture was moving around up there. Big, heavy things smashing into each other. A window popped. Crash, another. Glass shattering everywhere right next to us in the laundry room. I pulled a towel down over Ryan and held him tight. If he was still crying, I didn't know it because I was feeling the sucking this time. It was like something trying to lift my body right up off the floor. Because the tornado, remember, has very strong sucking power. Arthur felt it too. Mother of God, he crossed himself, we're going to die. 10 seconds more and that howling, shrieking tornado was upon us. The blanket, I screamed at Arthur's ear. He pulled it down from the countertop and we covered ourselves, our hands shaking wildly. I wasn't worried about my mom then, or my dad, or Mrs. Smiley, just us, Ryan and Arthur and me, huddled together there on the floor. The roaring had started somewhere to the east and then came bearing down on us like 100 freight trains. Only that twister didn't move on. It stationed itself right overhead, making the loudest noises I'd ever heard, whining worse than any jet. There was a tremendous crack, and I felt the wall shudder behind us. I knew that our house was being ripped apart. Suddenly, chunks of ceiling were falling on our head. We'll be buried, was all I could think. At that moment, as plain as anything above the deafening roar, I heard my dad's voice. The shower is the safest place, he had always told me. I didn't question hearing it. Holding Ryan against me with one arm, I began crawling toward the shower stall. I reached back and yanked at Arthur's shirt, and somehow we got inside with the blanket. Another explosion, and the glass shower door shattered all over the bathroom floor. We pulled the blanket over our head, and I began to pray. Out loud, though I couldn't hear my own voice. God help us, I said it over and over into Ryan's damp hair, my lips moving against his head. I knew Arthur was praying too, jammed there into my side. I could feel Ryan's heart beating through his undershirt against mine. My heart was thanking God for making me go back for him, but not in words. What if he hadn't gone to get Ryan? Ugh, frightening. Outside those places where our bodies touched, there was nothing but terror as the roar of the tornado went on and on. I thought the world was coming to an end, had come to an end, so would we any minute. Then I felt Ryan's fat fingers close around one of mine. I pulled my hand to his mouth and he pulled my hand to his mouth and started sucking on my finger. It made me cry. The tears ran down my cheeks and onto his head. With the whole world blowing to pieces around us, Ryan took my hand and made me feel better, and he felt better. So that little brother that he was so jealous of, right? He just was trying to make his brother feel better. Afterwards, neither Arthur nor I was able to see how long we huddled in the basement shower. A tornado's forward speed is generally 30 to 50 miles an hour, the meteorologist had told us. Our tornado's forward speed was 0. It parked right there on Sand Crane Drive. 5 minutes or 10, we couldn't tell, but it seemed like an hour. Roaring and humming and shrieking, that twister was right on top of us. I'll never be that scared again as long as I live, and neither will Arthur. When at last the house began to let up, Arthur jerked out from under the blanket, leaned across me to the opening of the shower, and vomited into the broken glass and sheetrock. The glow from the half-buried flashlight showed his head bobbing up and again and again. Squeamish as I am about something like that, I wasn't revolted. I wondered if I had wet my pants myself. I couldn't tell for sure because water had started rising under us in the shower. My shoes and jeans were both soaked, and I had to move Ryan, who was wriggling to be put down, way up on my shoulder. Arthur, I said, my voice shaking, but I really wanted to encourage him. We made it. We're alive. I looked away as he heaved again. Arthur was still doubled over the sheetrock mess when the hail began. Hail. Once it got going, it hit us with the force of buckshot. That fast, I knew. The kitchen upstairs was gone, floor and all. Those marble-sized hailstones were pouring in from somewhere. I thought of Mom's new sewing machine and my bike. If you're in the basement, you shouldn't be feeling hail coming in, right? So whatever was above him is gone. It didn't take long for Arthur to crawl back beside me, but even under the blanket, those hailstones hurt like crazy, smacking our heads and shoulders. We huddled together to protect Ryan, who was down in my lap again. And suddenly I was hit with a sickness worse than Arthur's. Mom, where was she? Did she get to Smiley's? Arthur, I said, sitting up straight, my mom. My whole family, he choked out. In that second, I could see my mother's car hurtling through the air, see it ripped it open, the black funnel sucking her out and swirling her away. I could hear her scream. Now, is he really seeing that, or is he imagining that in his head? He's imagining that. I started crying. She can't be dead. She can't be. I hit my head against the tile to make the picture stop. Shut up, Arthur shouted. Just shut up, will you? He pulled away so we weren't touching and drew himself into the opposite corner of the shower, and I didn't care. I felt as if someone had reached down my throat and turned me inside out. Another terrifying thought slammed into my head. What if we were the only ones alive? 3 of us, out of 38,000 people, an entire city gone, bodies strewn all the way to the river. Chills raced up my arms. I was shaking all over. At least, I scrabbled for something to hang on it. At least I have my dad. He'll be safe. Won't he, out on the farm? With a rush, I thought of everyone else. Stacy and Angelique, not even a year old, and all the Darlingtons in between. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, have mercy on us. I heard Arthur's prayer above the ripping and rattling of the storm, and I knew he wasn't thinking of himself. I clenched my teeth to keep from going to pieces. Please, God, please, I begged, make everyone okay. Overhead, the storm continued to rage. The sharp sound of hail striking tile went on, and I began to wonder if we might just be battered to death. Now and then a finger of wind reached into our hiding place, flipping the blanket until we'd anchored it under us again, and I shuddered and pulled up my knees, shifting the baby once more. With the temperature dropping and the water rising, we couldn't stay in the shower stall forever. What were we going to do? Only Ryan had recovered enough to be himself and was dabbling one hand in the water, making happy noises. Once I got him into a standing position against my knees, he began talking and stretching under the blanket tent. He wasn't worried. I wiped my tears on the back of his undershirt. What does he know, I thought for a second, wishing I could trade places with him. He wouldn't even remember this night. As Ryan bunched up in my lap to jump, I took hold of his hands to steady him, and I made little balls of his fists and felt how small they were underneath my big 12-year-old hands. Suddenly it occurred to me that I had saved his life. I had. I warned myself on that thought as I rubbed my cheek against his head. He was so little. As he bounced and gurgled, I could see why Mom liked him so much. That was when I remembered Minerva, my cat. Oh no, had she followed us downstairs? But a cat would find a place, wouldn't she, to ride out the storm? Cats are smart. They can take care of themselves. She's all right, I convinced myself, because I couldn't bear to think otherwise. The hard peppering sound of the hail was growing slushier and softer. The hail was turning to rain, and quickly I slipped the blanket off my head. My gosh, there was the night sky where the bathroom ceiling had been. I shivered as icy raindrops splattered on my face and went streaking down my neck. Somehow seeing was worse than knowing. Arthur, I nudged him with my foot. Look up there. He pulled the blanket off and tipped back his head. We sat there blinking into the rain as the blanket bobbed up and down over Ryan.